Mike, alcoholic? And first I'd like to start off with my sobriety date. I did this a few times and I almost forgot one time, and that's very important to me. It's May the 18th of 2012. It's by the grace of God. Also, I'd like to say it's only by the grace of God that I stand up here tonight in front of you guys and ladies. I always like to start my story off with the AA history of my family because that's very important. As a child, I run around this room as a little boy. And my dad got sober in 1984 through Pinehurst Treatment Center at the hospital when they used to have it there. And while he was inpatient there, he met my mother. She was a nurse, about 12 years younger, and they hit it right off. And he got out and went down to Bethesda halfway house and stayed sober, did electrical work. And I come along. He started his business in electrical the year I was born. And they moved out and started their life. But when he come into the halfway house, all he had was the clothes on his back. So, keep that in mind of how good sobriety was to him as my story goes on. I grew up on the backside of Southern Pines. The first house that they purchased together was a mobile home. And the neighborhood was rough. There was a lot of kids my age and some older ones. And let's see, let me back up a little bit. But when I was about 3 years old, my mom and dad split up, and nasty divorce. I was used as like a weapon in the divorce, and I didn't see my dad for about 3 years. And he stayed sober and did what he was supposed to do, and a lot of people in AA backed him, and he got full custody of me when I was about 6. So I come back to this area, and went back to live where he was staying at in that neighborhood and started going to Southern Pines School over on the west side. And automatically as a child, I was an angry child. I was mean as hell. I was a bully. And I had some backup. The guys on the bus, we clicked up and we stayed together. And the older kids didn't mess with us because we teamed up on them. And I was pretty awful in school. I made it through my grades, but my attention span was short. I was always fidgeting, picking my nails, running around the classroom, didn't want to do my work. I just wanted to play all the time. And so my first touch of alcohol, I was 5 years old. That was when I was with my mom when I wasn't seeing my dad. She was living in Seven Lakes with another nurse. And they were drinking at the lake, and she told me not to mess with it, that it was apple juice with no sugar. Well, automatically at that age of 5, I was a defiant child. I tasted it. And it did taste good. I didn't like it. I didn't drink it. I just tasted it. That was my first taste of alcohol. So when I went to live with my dad, he ended up taking me down to Sand Hills Pediatrics for an evaluation because I was causing so much trouble in school. And there are drugs in my story. I don't mean to offend anybody, and I'm grateful for what happened to me. They took me down fast. That and alcohol took me down fast. So that is a part of my story. The first thing that happened was he took me to Sand Hills Pediatrics. They gave me a computer test. Said I was ADHD. And that was the first roundabout with some chemicals. They put me on some Ritalin and Adderall. And I liked the way it made me feel when I first took it for about an hour. Then it zoned me out all day and I could sit still in class. And so I guess with that, I did okay in school. I always wanted to play, like I said. I stayed in trouble all the time, though. Back then, they used to paddle you, too. You get your tail whipped, and that didn't really faze me. I liked that instead of getting my stuff taken away. That was the better option for me, because that would go by in a few minutes. You just holler and run around in circles, and then it's done. The more you holler, the faster it stops. My dad ended up, when I was probably about, I said 9 years old, he was in AA staying sober, and he met a lady in here. I was with him the night he met. Actually, she was like over here. I was sitting over here. The Friday night group here was his home group. And she had a daughter that was 7 years older than me and a son that was 9 years older than me. And, she was a good woman, and I think she had about 3 years sobriety, something like that. And I don't know where he was at, maybe 9, 10 years. And they got married. He wanted to give me a mother figure. I didn't have a mother figure growing up. And let's see, they ended up building a house. His business took off as time went on. It grew, and he was becoming successful in that area. So they bought a house out by Highland Hills in one of the neighborhoods behind Highland Hills Golf Course. And she moved in, and everything was good for a while until something happened chemically, and she started getting medications and going to shock treatments in the hospital, in and out the psych ward. It was a bad episode, and she relapsed on narcotics in the house. And I was always the type of kid that was real curious about the hip-hop era. I grew up in that era, listening to the 102.1 and 99.1. And I used to always ask my dad, he couldn't figure it out, where the stuff was at around town. As a child, don't know why. My dad was in recovery, and I don't know why. I was just curious about that. Wanted to know where to cop at a young age. And so I told her, like I said, her daughter was 7 years older than me, and me and her just kind of clicked up. And at 9 years old, I started smoking pot, and I loved it. You know, I was never the best at sports. I was just an average guy. But I found something that made me a little different. Made me the man is what I thought. I remember as time went on, my dad used to ask, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Because it makes me popular." You know, and that set me apart from the rest of the people. I hid it like crazy. He didn't know for years, really. He ended up divorcing this lady, and her son got killed in a car wreck, a DWI, or a drunken driving accident, let's put it that way. And he died, and that really took her off the edge, unfortunately. And they divorced. Well, when they divorced, her daughter moved out as well, and the house dried up. And I actually did pretty good then. I was 8th grade. I got to playing sports, and my grades went up. I did okay. I got to high school, though, and when I got to high school, it was wide open. I hung out with older guys, and they were well-connected and drinking, and they could get beer anytime. And I remember my first real drinking bout was down here in Pine Bluff at a guy's party, and I helped go set up. And his mom and grandma and all them were out there, and they had boxes of wine. And I started drinking at like noon with them, and didn't stop that night. I just drank all night long, PJ, alcohol, and ended up running off in the woods with somebody. And her older brothers were looking for me. There's about 3 of them. And they had a pretty good reputation, too, you know. Luckily, I passed out in the woods on a pallet. And I woke up the next morning. I felt like crap, but I could not wait to do it again. It was awesome in my mind, you know. And that's how it went. Every chance, whoever's parents were out of town, we went to their house, we drank, we partied like hell. And there wasn't a lot of consequences back then other than the parents on your back, you know, that type of thing. I would sneak around and hide and stuff. My first run-in with the law, the first one, I was taking my dad's cars at night. I'd push them out the driveway and then go all the way to Hoke County. Now, I lived in Southern Pines by Highland Hills, and I drive all the way to Hoke County because that's where my connection was, and park out there and do this stuff all night, on the school nights. And I would haul tail down our road and cut the lights off and cut the ignition off, and it was, you know, of course, the power steering and all that goes out. Now, these are SUVs and trucks like Silverados. Stuff. You've got to fight it to get it just right. Sometimes I fell a little short, but he never noticed. But he did start noticing, and he was tired of me taking his cars. These were brand new vehicles. He'd worked hard to pay for it, and he was tired of it. So he called the law on me one night. They didn't find me. I snuck back in and everything. And I remember how I got back in because he used to lock the windows, so I couldn't get back in. Anyway, you know, sometimes you have to beat on the door and just in the puppy face. He called the law on me. They come the next morning, arrested me, took me to the police department, but I had the keys. So it wasn't a felony. It was unlawful use of misdemeanor. And they wanted to take me to school. And I was like, oh, no. I had them drop me off. Y'all know about Pinehurst. You know the auditoriums around the side? That's where they dropped me off. You weren't going to drop me off in front of Pinehurst in a police car. Ain't no way. You know, I told them this is where I get out at. You know, so that was my first bout with the law. In my story, you all got war stories. You know, I'll tell you some of the trouble I've been in and some of the things that God used me and come in to do some things. I'll get into that. And that was the first run. And the second time, I had been gone for a week, and I'd taken some money. I was slick. My dad had a big Liberty safe, and it had a dial and it had a key lock. And he had deadbolts on his doors at this time. Everything in the house was locked down. When he left, it was locked down. You know. Anyway, I went in there while he was sleeping. There was one key to that safe. I got it out, went unlocked it, got the spare out of the safe, put his keys back. So I had a safe key. And he liked to keep cash in there. He was a construction worker, so he'd cash some small checks and stack the money up. And he didn't really keep, count it or anything. It was just in there, $100 bills. And that was great access for a kid like me, a teenager like I was. So I was taking his money and copping and drinking and the whole nine with it. And I got in trouble. I'd been gone, and the sheriff's department was at the house when I come walking back up through the woods. And I had a felony amount of marijuana on me. And they arrested me. He told them to take me on to jail. It was kind of up to him, but he was wanting to teach me a lesson. He left me in there for a couple of weeks. I was 16. And I remember I was in there, and I called him up, and I was by myself in this cell because I was in J block, the juvenile block, and I had beat myself up with my own fist and told him they were jumping me to get me, bond me out. Because I knew they had money to bond me out because I'd counted it. I kept track of how much money was in that safe. He'd come get me. My bond was $10,000, he needed $1,000. I knew it was in there. And he wouldn't come get me. Finally, he did. He come got me. And when he come got me, that's when he found out about the money. So he's like, here's the deal. I got you out of jail. You're going to treatment, or I'm pressing some more felonies on you for this money you took from me. I said, I'm going to treatment. I'm not going back to jail. I can't do that again. So I went over here to Bethesda Link. That's what it's called back then. Now it's Port, I guess. While I was in there, I did not want to be there. I didn't think I had a problem. All these other kids were doing all these exotic drugs, and I was just smoking weed and drinking. I didn't have no problem. If everybody leave me alone, let me do what I want to do, that was the problem. I went in there hard-headed. I did hear some things that have stuck with me, like on page 417 about acceptance. They used to call groups, and this girl made sure she pointed that out to me. Let's see. While I was in there, though, I raised Cain. I was angry. The lady that was over that treatment center, she wrote a book on anger, so she loved me. Everybody kept a journal, almost like a 10-step, kept up with what their day was like, what happened, She made me write mine on what I got angry about. And she loved to call the groups on me and blah, and I hated it. I would run out and slam the door, and then I'd go back and slam it again because I didn't do it good enough the first time, kicking stuff. I ended up running away. We used to smoke back then. They had this little truck. Your family could bring you cigarettes. And I remember one night I was just like, I just can't do this no more. I went and took all my cigarettes, loaded my pockets up, laced my shoes up, and took off running. Heard a kid share that the other night in here. It's pretty wild. I was gone for 3 days. Law didn't find me. My dad found me. I think some of you guys might have been there. When he come in, he was a pretty big guy, 6'2", about 260. Nobody got in his way when he come up in the house. And he said, all right, here's the deal, same thing. You're going to jail. They said they'd take you back. They were doing him a favor because he was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I went back, and I ended up getting kicked out. Thought I was going to graduate. Thought I'd, pull the wool over all their eyes. They ended up kicking me out. And there was no consequences. He just said, look, you're going to work. That's the deal. If you're going to live in this house, you're going to work or go to school. Obviously, you can't stay in school, so you're going to work. So I went to work, and that was great. That was awesome. Guys my age were getting allowances or, doing little petty stuff. I was making checks. I loved it. I could buy what I wanted, and I could do what I wanted to do on the job site all day. And we went like that for a while. I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 months after getting out of that treatment center, I got the exact same charges that I had when I went in there. And I went to jail again and got out, got probation, got 3 years probation for that, and a whole lot of community service down at Adhd waste plant, shoveling crap for 124 hours. It was my fault they put me on the Adhd, fire department. Me being slick, I wanted something that I could get off on, like Goodwill or something, where they just kind of write me off, or she got me. And, guys asked me, why are you so tan? And I'm in sludge fields, dude, shoveling, using a time clock to keep up my community service time. I ended up trying to get through probation. They put me all the way up to the level, started supervisor, went all the way up to house arrest, and I was just trying to BS my way all the way through it, man. I was still, this is at the point where alcohol and narcotics, pain pills really took a hold because I could no longer smoke pot, and that had always been my go-to thing, but I had drug tests every week. So I could eat pills for 4 days, and I could drink every night if I wanted. She didn't give me breathalyzer. So that's when I really started drinking and using other things hard. It caught up to me. There was several things that happened. Put some pictures on Facebook of money and guns and pictures of me at Myrtle Beach while on probation, the damn date on it. And she had a folder of this stuff. Scott remembers that. She had a folder of this stuff, and she come in and said, what is this? I was like, what can you say? You know? She went ahead and walked me right on across to the jail, walked me across the street in cuffs and locked me up. Give me another. That was the second violation. First one was felon drug test. So I ended up coming up with this grand scheme of going into the military. Went to a recruiter in Sanford. I did everything. Went to Raleigh for my maps and all that stuff, and scored high enough to get any job. And so that was the grand scheme. I had Cunningham as an attorney, and he thought that was a good idea. My PO thought it was a good idea. When I went in the courtroom, Judge Webb did not think it was a good idea, and he told me, he sent me to prison. This was my first prison sentence, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, they just sent me to prison? Here they, don't they know who I am? It was kind of a shell shocker. I ended up going to Hoke Youth Institute because I was 19 at the time. So 19 to 26 years old. That was a heck of an experience. Let's put it at that. I've never been, around gangland or anything like that in my life. That was a shocker. I was only there for like a month. I went to weight correction up in Raleigh. It's an honor grade camp. I was the youngest guy on the yard. And I ended up finding some older guys. I say they're older. They're about my age now, but they seemed old when I was 19 with no facial hair or anything. And I started working out with them. Now, these guys were going to meetings. They were going to church service and stuff, and they dragged me along sometimes. But I just wasn't ready. I just, man, I'm in here for some weed, man. And I told myself I'd come with this grand scheme. Now, before this, I had tried my probation officer made me go get my GED. And while I was getting my GED, I loved Sandhills. I was like, oh yeah, this is me right here. I have arrived. So I went and put a major in for business admin. Didn't last a semester. The problem is I did good in class. The classwork was great. But as soon as I got out of class, we went to trips every day and drank. And I was not of age. We drank more at the bars before we were 21 than when we were 21. So I flunked out. Anyways, in prison, I come up with this grand scheme of I'm going to get out, I'm going to do good, I'm just going to smoke a little weed and drink a little bit and all the other stuff, and I'm going to go back to school for marine biology. I have no idea where that come about. But my dad bought it. He thought it was cool. Do the internship at Fort Fisher and all that stuff, and live on boats and whatnot. So I went back to school the next semester. I went to work for a little while, went back to school, and I hung in there for a little while. Don't know how I did it, but I was able to go to work and school, and then it just, boom, here we go again on my little spree, wide open, throwing parties every night, people in and out of the house all hours of the night. Dad, right around this time, this is in 2006, my dad had a knee injury. He was building a log cabin out in Eastwood, and he tripped over a 5-gallon bucket of paint. And, I'm not going to take his inventory. He told me some things that, he wasn't going to meetings, whatnot, wasn't working with a sponsor, whatnot. And he went to the doctor, and they gave him some Lorcets. And that set his disease back off. He didn't throw him away. He wore his doctor out, and after that was over, he went to the methadone clinic, and that fired it up. He told me, he said, son, every time I went to the methadone clinic, I went to prison. You want to go? I said, yeah, I want to go. I'm tired of spending my money on this stuff. I spend $10 a day and stay lit. And so we teamed up, And one night he asked me to go get some other stuff for him. He had asked some questions of me and some of my friends about what we were doing and into and dealing with and whatnot. And we'd tell him a little bit. And so he piqued his interest. Now he's done relapse. Now he wants the goodies, the real good stuff, damn some methadone. And he asked me one night, he handed me a wad of $100 bills and said, go get it. I said, all right. First I was going to tell him no, and then I was like, well, that's good. This is a really good opportunity for Mike, being like I was. And so I went and did it, and it was on. He got his little bit, and he threw me a couple of them, and I no more did I have to pay for my addiction. But in 22 years of sobriety, he was a fairly successful electrical contractor, and I took advantage of his money with his addiction. And, I thought it was everything I ever wanted, because my dad was pretty strict. I mean, he was cool with my friends he liked or whatnot, but, he didn't want us messing up, and he knew where we were headed. He was tired of talking to his blue in the face, but so there we were, wide open. And, in the beginning of it, I was going back and forth to the beach. I was doing all this stuff, going to clubs and bars and drinking off his money with his credit cards. And he was supplying my habit. Things were good. But that only lasted for so long, He didn't pick up a drink, but I was drinking real bad. Ended up getting a DWI one night. We went out to, let's see, where did we go? It was Outback. We were just planned on going out to have a few drinks and have a steak. And one of the guys that were with me that night's in here. And, you know, when I start drinking, we used to joke about it. I would say, man, look, man, when you ride with me tonight, when I start drinking, don't expect to leave with me. I don't know what's going to happen. That was a joke. It was like, I was dead serious. I don't know what's going to happen. You ride with me, you know, you might be finding a ride home. You might be going to jail. That was just the way I lived. And anyways, this night we went out and we started drinking mixed drinks and we ate. And once that buzz started rolling, it's like, yeah, I got to be seen now. So we went to the Jefferson Inn and showed my tail, you know. And after that, it was over. Some of the guys called and was like, hey, we're all going to Pure Gold. You want to go? Hell yeah. You know, why wouldn't I on a work night? You know. So I went there, and when I got there, we ended up, I didn't get in. The other guys that were ahead of us got in, and something snapped in me. There was a mixture cocktail in my system that made me just crazy. And I ended up that night, to save you all the drama of it, I ended up with 4 assaults with a deadly weapon, intent to kill, and DWI, possession of marijuana. I don't even know what. They had a stack of papers. They took me to jail. They said I wasn't getting out for years. Ended up getting bonded out the next morning so I can make it to the methadone clinic before they closed. And I was all lumped up and stuff. And alcohol got to where it scared me to death. This wasn't the first episode of something like that happening. I've had my friends save me. I would sometimes find the biggest, baddest dude and just run up and push him. For no reason. He said nothing. He looked at me. I'd snap. And it wasn't like that every time. But it was getting to be more and more frequently I showed out. About every one out of 4 times I drank. And it was embarrassing waking up the next morning like, oh my God, I got to show my face. And sometimes I didn't know what I did. The guys would come tell me, oh God, did I do that really? And so it started scaring me, man. And I knew I was just so lucky that night. You know, I was one of those guys that carried weapons and stuff. And I was so glad that I didn't have it in the car that night, even though I used the car. You know, but that all worked out because it was that I was trying to get away from getting jumped by bouncers. So that slowed my drinking down. It didn't slow the other stuff down. There was no slowing that down. I didn't draw a sober breath for years. Ended up, go ahead and speed up a little. I ended up, some things happened with our house. We ended up in a condo over here in Pinehurst. And the place was raided. And I was charged with, I'm not even going to give you the list, but the big one was trafficking opium or heroin, the biggest trafficking charge you can get. It's 28 grams or better. And I went to jail. When I went to jail, my dad got locked up with me. They gave him trafficking by possession. His name was on the lease. And I tried to take the blame for it. I honestly did. They weren't trying to hear it. They wanted more. And he wouldn't give them more. He told them I'd live my life. My son's going to live his if it's up to me. I'm so grateful that he did that today. So there we went. We went off together. They separated us immediately. Went off to jail. They took him on to jail. They took me down to the sheriff's department while they counted everything up, and there was some guns involved. And at this point in my life before they raided, I was so miserable. I didn't go out no more. Guys, y'all didn't even see me. I just sat there on the couch. I wouldn't even go get cigarettes. My dad's business was totally gone. He had not a dollar to his name and probably $1 million worth of debt. And I would convince him to go get me cigarettes with a $20 bill if he could keep the change. And I had to give him money to go see his mother in Fayetteville. So when we went to jail, it was kind of just like a deep breath. We're getting ready to go through hell. This is going to be terrible for about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, but it's like a relief. I was so tired. I was so hurt. I didn't know what to do. I remember we come up here when they had the old chairs, and we sat in a meeting right before all this happened, and I just couldn't ask for help, man. I didn't know what to do. I went to detox a couple times and walked out. If you ever have to go to detox, hopefully none of you guys ever will again, don't take your phone with you. So when we got to jail, we stayed in a watch room, I guess is what they call it, for about a week, something like that, 6 days a week. And finally the nurse come up and they were monitoring us. We were in bad shape. We didn't speak. We just laid on the floor. We didn't shower. We didn't use the phone. I didn't even know nobody's number. Nobody. I ended up taking a staple out of my paperwork, scratching my grandmother's number in my paperwork. That's where my brain was at. My brain was not working. They ended up separating us. Finally, the nurse came in and said, "Are you capable of defending yourself?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She put me down the felony block, down the hill in the old part of the jail, and put him up in A block where they come in with the medical carts. And they monitored us, and I went through hell. I mean, it was so bad. I didn't eat. I couldn't eat. I just get up. They made you get up and get your tray, or they lock you up in a rubber room. So I get up and just throw it on the table. The inmates took pity on me, and I wake up with milks and juices stacked beside me to keep me alive. And I lived on that for several weeks. I stayed in there from February, I think 24th of 2010 until December was when I went to court. My dad ended up going to court. When they come at me, they come at me with a plea bargain. Oh no, you don't have to get it right now if you don't want. They come at me with a plea for 225 to 279 months. So I'll save you the math. That's 18 years, 9 months minimum. For trafficking, and the DA said he can take this or he can take it to trial. Lawyer said if you take it to trial, you'll never get out of prison. So that was it. He said, "Well, can you sit still?" Thank you. He said, "Can you sit still, and just see if we can do better?" I said, "Yeah, I can do that." And around July, some of you guys may have done this, I don't know, but there was about 30 people in AA that wrote character witness letters for my father. And he ended up getting a sentence of 90 to 117 months for trafficking by possession. And a couple of people in AA that are retired attorneys now were up at the bench when he went to court. And 6 months later, they come to me with the same plea. They didn't want to. I was accepting the treatment. They said, "He's not going to treatment. He's gone." And kind of gets me. You got to work with me here now. There's some sensitive stuff in my story. Anyway, so off we went. He went to Craven. I sat in jail 6 months. They ended up coming there and getting me. I went to Central Prison at 23. And on the way up there, it's kind of wild. A friend of mine's sister was going to do 8 to 10 months for some things she had done in her addiction. And she's in the back of the van, and I'm in the front of the van. It's sectioned off, and she's crying the whole way, and like, "Oh my God, Mikey, how's this happening?" And I'm trying to build myself up because I'm fixing to go to Central Prison at 160 pounds at 23 years old. I didn't have facial hair back then. I was a kid, basically. And I'm trying to, I'm scared to death. That's real, I think I'm a tough guy, but I was scared to death to go up there with the big boys. And I ended up, I got in, whatnot, and they have these cubbies where they go through your personal stuff. And I was standing next to a guy in a red jumpsuit. I was like, what if they're going to put me in red? Well, they put me in brown pants, white T-shirt back then. Come to find out later on, that was a death row inmate. So, my actions had put me in the same place with these guys. I stayed there for a couple of months because I got there in December. I had to go through the holidays and it was snow and all that. And I went to an AA meeting while I was there. I knew I needed help. I really did. I knew I needed help. And I had been abstinent while I was in jail. And I went to the meeting. But, the problem was I couldn't become vulnerable in prison. I could not become vulnerable and put my mess out there in front of these guys in Central Prison. It wasn't happening. So I didn't have a program. I actually took one of the big books as a memorabilia that said Central Prison on it, so I'd never forget that. I knew I'd want that one day. Just didn't know, what was going to happen. So I left there, went to another maximum security prison. As soon as I got there, it was flooded. Got there, tattoos, like Tabor City, 6 or 8 tattooed guys on the block, and I fell right on in with my crowd. That's the people I've always attracted to. And so I started doing the stuff in prison. For you all that haven't been, prison's just it's like a frat party for the mental health. What it is. I left there after about 6 months, went to another close custody out in Bertie. While I was there, I got a chance to do some construction work on a prison, and they said they'd send me where I wanted to go. And my daddy was at Hornet, so I said, let's try Hornet. He got me there several days, a 2-year waiting list to get there. Got there, and my dad was back in the program. He was reading his Bible. He was reading the big book, the other inmates on the yard, and he'd invite me over. The first night I got to that camp, I got high. Scared to death, paranoid as crap, sitting on the bunk like, stuck. And that's all I knew. My coping mechanism. There was some alcohol in prison. It was mostly substances. But I'd do whatever. As long as it made me feel good, it is what it is. And while there, I started going to meetings. My dad told me, he said, look, you can go to one meeting a week with me. I'll do that. I don't know what it was I heard in the meeting. Something clicked, man. It's something it come on my heart like a ton of bricks. And it was like, you know what? When is the time? What else are you going to have to go through? I mean, the yets have all occurred. The next thing is you're dead. You're going to keep doing this stuff in here. You're coming back if you don't die. I mean, my brain, it was logic enough to reason that, even though I was still insane. So I heard some of this meeting. So I went with my dad the next day, and him and the guys were reading a big book on, and I didn't want to be no parts of that. He invited me. I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go hit some weights with the fellas. And, I told him, I said, man, I think I'm going to take this thing serious. I think I'm just going to give it a shot. Didn't make my mind up how long. None of that was a factor. I still had about 5.5, 6 years in prison left. So I'm going to give it a shot, see what happens. So he lined me up with a guy that he thought was working a good program, and the guy got me into the book, got me praying, and I had been praying already for God to keep me safe the day I hit Central Prison. And he did. It was nothing of that bad stuff you guys hear about prison happened to me. I've seen it happen. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things I've seen. None of that happened to me, by the grace of God. And so I started doing the deal, man. God said, can you pray in the morning, ask God to keep you sober? Can you pray at night? I said, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I've been praying all along anyways. I didn't have a lot of faith, but I could pray. And he gave me a daily reflection. He said, read this every morning. Reflect on how you identify with it, basically what he said. And that's what I started doing. He got me into the book, worked the steps with the guy. And I was walking the track one day with my dad out there. And this is a medium custom unit. You got the guys on the weights. You got your gangs and all this stuff going on. And people up there with a gun watching you. And we're walking the track, and he said, son, how you doing? And I said, man, I'm at peace. I didn't put no thought in it. I didn't plan that out to please him or anything. I just spoke from the heart. He said, boy, I've been waiting all your life to hear you say that. So he ended up leaving. He made his honor grade, went down to Hoke. Some of you guys may have seen him down there. He was chairing the meetings down at Hoke or whatever. I know there's some volunteers in here. And I ended up going. Several months later, I went to Sanford Correction. I did not want to go to Sanford. I put in for Hillsborough. I heard they had the best work release. I heard they had sponsor passes, all that stuff. And I aggravated the mess out of 2 case managers to get me there. Well, I got my bags. It says Sanford. That was a God moment. Got to Sanford. I got a new sponsor. I knew I had to have a sponsor. And I followed the directions of my old sponsor. He said, as soon as you get there, find you a sponsor, Mike. And that's what I did. And I worked with this guy through the mail. We worked the steps through the mail. He'd come up to my 5th step with me. And after 20 months of being on that unit, I was able to go out. And this fellow started taking me to meetings. I could only do it once a week for 90 days. And I could go out 3 times a week. And we pretty much went out that much. We went to a lot of meetings. He got me active, taught me how to make coffee outside of the unit. I was doing that in prison anyways. And through this time, though, I started working with some guys, sponsored guys, working the steps with them. And one of my buddies come through and went through one of the hardest times of his life, a very hard time in his life, and I was able to be there for him as a true friend, as a sober friend, and he stayed sober since he got out, by the grace of God, and it's just a heck of an experience. I was working with a guy, and he had a bad home situation, and it's like, man, you can't go back home. Your parents do this and that, and the house is flooded with stuff. You can't do that. And it's like, I know, man. So I talked to my sponsor, and he ended up getting in a halfway house. So it hit me one day. Here goes one of those moments again. It hit me, and it was like, well, what makes you think you're any better than him that you don't need to go to a halfway house when you get out of prison? Because I had a couple other options, but my sobriety should come first. So I talked to my sponsor, but it was funny. He looked at me and said, you think? Which I like that, though. I need that direct boom sometimes. I like that. That's real to me. So that's what I did. I got really connected with the Sanford group. They were awesome up there. Central Carolina group. You guys ever heard of it? Come check them out. They took me in knowing I was an inmate and loved me and got me active, chairing meetings, speaking, just doing the deal, And I felt a part. I didn't feel any different just because I was in prison. I was locked up. But I was part of that group, I'd say 30 months, roughly, something like that. And when I got out, a few things, first thing I did was went to a meeting. I went to 2 that day. So I knew that's what I needed to do. And the first day I come up here, they teach me how to make coffee up here, That's a good thing, though, right? So it's just been great, man. I come into this room, and there's so many guys I used to run with that are sober. Shoot, that's probably 10 or more tonight. And it's mind-blowing. A lot of them, they're miracles. We're all miracles. Don't take it in any other way. But I knew these guys. I'd run with them. Some of them live with me. You know, it's so amazing, the things that are happening in their lives. I've seen some of them just, all of us. You know, it's amazing. This program is so awesome. You know, every day I read and pray. You know, I talk to my sponsor. And I go to meetings and I help people when I can. That is the simplicity of my program. You know, I've done the other stuff, the action up there, but that's my daily maintenance. That's what I do, and it's working. You know, it's worked this far. And I just try to keep it simple and make sure I do those things. If something comes up, I try to find a solution through my sponsor, through other people. So, quick little story before we close. I can't talk over a certain time now. I get in trouble. Because anytime you go over, it's ego, you know, and my sponsor will let me know that. So we the other day we was in Walmart. I think Carl was with us, me and Scott, and we went to a meeting. We wanted to go out to lunch. We had to pick up a few things from Walmart, and there was this little old lady sitting there. She was almost 90 years old, guys, and she was just as happy and as peaceful as she could be. So we stopped and talked to her. We thought it was really neat. And one of the fellas asked her, you know, he just started the conversation off. We shook hands. He said, "Ma'am, what is the key to happiness in life?" And she said exactly what this fellowship teaches. She says to serve God and others. That's what has made her life fulfilling. And that's what this program teaches. This prepares us to do that. To be of usefulness to others and of God. That's what them steps do. You know, you know, when my faith in God is steady growing, I steady seek. Something in the big book that stuck out to me early on, and there's a solution, is God doesn't make too hard of turns on those that seek Him. And that really just hit me. You know, just start out small and see what happens. It's made things so much simpler, other than, you know, what I grew up believing. Some things did happen in sobriety. I lost a lot. I've lost my whole dad's side of the family, my dad included. He died in prison of liver cancer. But he got to see his son sober. I don't want to talk about that too much because I get emotional. And I've done good tonight, actually. I did better this time than I did last time in Sanford. Lord, mercy, I stopped about 4 or 5 times. You know, that was just the thing with the old lady. That was so awesome. Things have worked out for me since I've been out beyond my comprehension. God is working in my life every day. And it blows my mind, man. Really, I did not... You hear it said all the time that if I'd have thought this up, I'd have sold myself short. Well, so far it's been like that. And I'm excited on this new journey. Excited to meet a lot of new faces. I'm going to pretty much close with that. I'm just grateful to be here, grateful to be sober today and to be a part of this group. I did join this home group to keep it a sober group. Made this my new home group, so I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.